What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the TDR Traded Black podcast. I'm your host, sdales. Wednesday, we were off. Well, we had a pre-recorded podcast on Monday. Hope you all had a great long weekend. It's midweek now. We're going to dive into a couple things here today, including the 10-to-1 reverse stock split regarding Aurora, as well as some news out of Virginia. And as well, we bring in Dan Ahrens. No, it's not Monday. It's Wednesday. With it being the holiday, we're bringing Dan Ahrens from AdvisorShares to talk about just the market in general as things are trading sort of sideways, I should say. Relatively quiet right now, but we'll get an update on him and find out what's going on so far this week and what we can anticipate for the remainder of the week. So let's welcome in Anthony Varell, TDR co-host. Happy Wednesday. Good to see you as you're hard at work, looking down, typing.
How's it going? Yeah, what's going on?
Not too much. Wednesday feels like a Tuesday, but that's what happens in a short week, right?
Yeah, solid Wednesday, long weekend. It's a mixed bag again for the day. And it's good to have Dan on. We got some good questions. We got some good headlines. It should be a good stream.
Peaks and valleys in this industry, and I think we're in a valley right now. We're used to this sort of thing. It's the waiting
valley.
game.
It's not. I mean, it's more so a lull. Like I wouldn't say I'd rather be in a valley, but I mean, it's like trading sideways, no news. Elizabeth Warren comes out of her hole every day just to say cannabis should be legalized. Like, you got ATB Capital now. Todd Harrison tweeted them out earlier today saying Schedule 3 any day now. I was kind of like, not again, not today, sir. Like, we're not going there. I mean, it's just a waiting game.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's a waiting game, and
it
could be worse. We could be waiting on safe banking. Thank God we're not waiting on safe banking.
Yeah, no kidding.
Otherwise, I think we're having a much different conversation right here. I mean, rescheduling is a path of least resistance to radical regulatory reform.
Agreed. Absolutely. Yep. The waiting game's the hardest part, as Tom Petty once said. But, let's welcome in our other TDR co-host, Guap, who's becoming a regular here on now. Good to see you. You're down in Florida. Good to see you, sir.
Yes, I've got my best Florida man shirt on. I've got a Virginia hat to cover the Virginia news. I'm ready to get into it today.
Where are you located? We're in Florida.
On the Gulf Coast.
Nice. A little bit better weather than North Carolina?
Yeah, a little bit. I think it was 30 degrees, and people were putting on winter coats when it was 70 here, so it's pretty
nice.
Funny.
Special shout out to our producer, Mitch, who's working double time right now. Wife about to give birth to twins. So a big congratulations coming up for Mitch. But man, guy's been working around the clock. So if you can give some love and get some likes on this video, all courtesy of Mitch, I think he deserves it here today. But man is working his butt off. Great guy.
I don't question his dedication now. He is literally producing this show from the hospital. The man is an animal.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, gents, let's get into it. Into the wire, outlining the biggest headlines in cannabis and other emerging spaces. Let's focus first on Aurora Cannabis, Anthony, who announced yesterday the completion of a 10-to-1 reverse stock split. What's the latest on this? And more importantly, why do you think this was done?
Yeah, it was done because I think they needed to maintain their NASDAQ listing. Obviously, the split was done yesterday. Stocks decayed greatly since then. Split, I think, brought it to around $5. It's sitting at like $3.40.
Okay.
Right now, I mean, probably going to watch, see where it goes. I just think this adds to why would you buy Aurora Cannabis when there's so many other names out there? Not to kind of dog a name when it's down, but I mean, ship's kind of sailed on Aurora. Like if you're talking about deploying capital, there's plenty of other places to deploy capital in the Canadian space and in the US space.
Yeah. And what's crazy is some of the people
is unique.
Yeah. Some of the people I talk to that don't follow the space closely like we do still bring up Aurora Cannabis, and it goes to show how much this industry has changed.
Well,
but man, go ahead.
So, I mean, in their defense, I mean, Aurora was the darling of the cannabis industry for a while when we were all talking about funded capacity.
It's just a long time ago.
Back in 2016. I mean, Aurora was building a great footprint. They just had nobody to sell cannabis to.
Yeah.
They had exports to Germany. They had potential into the US via a vehicle, which just never materialized due to timing. I don't like, kudos to people that still want to ride the train and still see value in the name. But I mean, there's other places, like I said, to get Canadian and international exposure you can go to that aren't going to probably do another reverse split down the road.
Yeah. Richard Kinney writes, ACB, this is the second reverse split in a very short time. I don't know when the last time they did it, but yeah, that's a good point. Tech Monkey, good to hear from you. Look forward to your show every day. Good to see you as well, viewers. Like this video. We want to, again, build this community. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily baked in newsletter. And as usual, share this video with your network once we're all done and completed here. And always subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Guap, I think when you look at this stock, Aurora Cannabis, not sure how much you follow it, but if you were paying for volatility over the past 5 years, you clearly have got your money's worth because this has been nothing but up and down. And I would say a lot of down as of late for this stock.
Yeah, you got your money's worth if you shorted it into the ground right from the start, as it turns out. So, yeah, I mean, it's not one I follow closely. There's a lot of check boxes that need to be checked for me to invest $1, and they were never really on the radar for me coming into the space, in 2020.
You're on mute, Shad.
Sorry, guys. I was saying Patrick Schwartz writes, maybe Canadian cannabis excess can go to Ukraine. Maybe not a bad idea, but this stock actually, seen brighter days, that's for sure. But the opportunity in Canada has passed. After this reverse stock split, do you think this is still a shorter's dream, this stock in particular?
I don't want to get speculative or tell anybody what to do, but I mean, I still think that there's probably some money to be made on the downside. What's it sitting at right now? It's sitting at $185 million market cap. I think they posted $45 million in revenue last quarter. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that was the number. Like I said, there's not a lot to like here.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, next up, let's focus on Virginia. We're at this point, I read correctly, the House of Delegates and Senate have each passed a legal sales bill, and it's set to be presented to the opposite chamber. So, Guap, fill us in on what this potentially does mean, and I guess why it's important for investors following the space based off of this announcement.
Yeah, as a landowner in Virginia and someone lives in nearby North Carolina, I've been rooting for the state to legalize for quite some time, and I've been following the fits and starts of these bills being presented. Timelines have come and gone in terms of when rec legal sales were to begin. So it takes a lot for me to get even a little bit excited. In the same way that people protect themselves against any sort of hope around safe banking, I protect myself when it comes to Virginia legalization news. So apologies if it sounds a little slanted, but yeah, I mean, basically the Senate has put together a bill. The House have put together a bill. They both passed it in the respective houses, and they sent it to the other house. What they're trying to do right now is really figure out what the differences are and how to come to some compromise. And so in terms of when that timeline plays out, I'm done speculating on the when. But the what are they trying to compromise on? It's launch timelines, social equity, tax rates, and outdoor and home grow cultivation. So, a lot. They're trying to figure out quite a bit. I think the most relevant piece of information from all this for investors is the launch date is, according to both of these bills, both in the House and the Senate, they both have rec sales launching January 1st, 2025.
Okay.
So, if the rest of this stuff is going to hopefully be worked out, Governor Youngkin is repeatedly gone on the record saying that he's not really a fan of the cannabis industry. But, eventually I think every state is going to realize how much this means in terms of tax dollars. Governors come and go. It's a matter of time. I can't put any percentage or any date on it. It's just I'm excited to see it. I really am, because Virginia is I'd have to look up the stats, but there's quite a few people up there.
Yeah.
So North Carolina and Virginia, South Carolina, we're starting to see rumblings of news in all three of those states. And for someone in the Southeast, very exciting.
So let's say we fast forward January 1, 2025, it goes live. Anthony, who are some of the companies that come to mind that'll benefit in that market?
Yeah, so it's a unique state, and from the population perspective, there's a little under 9 million people in the state of Virginia. There's
Yeah.
only 3 MSOs that are there currently. You've got GTI with 6 retail doors. You've got the Cannabis with 12 licenses, 10 open dispensaries, and 2 dispensaries in development that I think one should be coming online here shortly. And then you've got Jushi with 6 retail doors there as well. That's it as far as MSO exposure goes. You got the 3 of them there. So, I mean, this could be a lucrative market for them. Like Guap said, you've got bordering states that don't have adult use cannabis, much less medical cannabis
Yeah.
regulations or just markets. So, I mean, they could be a beneficiary of that. I mean, I would be very curious to see how this market shapes up once adult use is passed. And that being said, it'd be Jushi, the Cannabis, and GTI would be big beneficiaries of this market flipping to adult use.
Yeah, and that's always been a big game plan for quite some time, Virginia, for Jushi, when we've had conversations with them in the past. I think there was a topic they were bringing up about how there's a big Amazon headquarters not far from there, where everything is going to be situated and located with some of their dispensaries. But, definitely a strategy that's in play for that specific company. But interesting to see if more companies will get involved in that market as it starts to mature, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could see. Go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say, interesting point is the way they worked it in Virginia is they actually divided up the state into 3 zones. So if we should go back and get maybe post a map about the zone that's closest to the northern part of the state probably has a higher population. So that we can slice that more than just number of licenses. We can actually kind of try and figure out which zone has the highest population, closest to metro areas, that kind of thing. And all of this is really just because we're trying to figure out how the business of cannabis is actually going to work in that state, but also to get an idea, just like when the Florida news came out, right, and all the True Leaves of the world rocketed. We're trying to kind of time something similar perhaps for the traders out there who are trying to put a little trade on for Virginia exposure. So we'll definitely keep following the story. It's right now, it's don't get too excited yet, right? We're talking about January 2025.
Yeah.
So we've got time to let this play out, and put some maps together and figure out which MSO maybe gets the most leverage to the state.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of Florida, I think there was also an announcement today that April 1st there's going to be, or April 1st there should be 22 new licenses granted in the state. So there'll be 22 more companies coming to the state of Florida.
I'm going to outline at the end of the podcast just an outline of catalyst moments that could be coming to fruition over the next short period of time. But as much as things have been a little bit slower this week, there's a lot of stuff, that could come to fruition within this space, which is why there's a hot topic regarding this industry right now. This is Into the Wire. I'm your host, Shad Dales, along with Anthony Varell and Guap here on a Wednesday, the TDR Traded Black podcast. Headline number 3, Maryland becomes gun friendly, as we focus on that state. So there's a bill that was passed that has a meaning for the cannabis industry regarding gun reform. Anthony, you want to explain a little bit further and what this means for potentially medical marijuana patients?
Yeah, so I thought this was interesting. It passed the Maryland Senate by a vote of 42-3. So it was overwhelmingly passed. This allows medical marijuana card holders to purchase and carry concealed firearms. This is the complete opposite of what we're seeing in a lot of states, such as Florida. Florida's working to overturn that. There's several other states where you cannot carry or own a concealed weapon if you have a medical marijuana card. This is also language that is being addressed in the SAFE Act as it relates to guns. They're trying to alleviate this. It's unconstitutional. There's a lot of legalese going on around it. And I mean, it's great to see Maryland getting on the train and doing something about it.
Yeah.
And then we'll also start to see it reformed, I think, in other markets moving forward.
Yeah. Dylan Rogers writes, that was huge. Reason why Maryland residents didn't want it to be medical. But yeah, it's definitely a sign of the times, and times are a changing. That's for sure.
Hypocrisy off the charts with that one. I mean, anyone can drink and buy an unlimited amount of alcohol, drink a bunch, and go shoot shotguns in the woods. But someone with a medical cannabis card can't even own a gun. it's just to me as someone
Crazy.
as a cannabis consumer, and yes, guys, gun owner. I'm wearing the ranger hat. Responsible hunting kind of situation. Target. I've always been a Boy Scout. It's just baffling to me that those two issues are intertwined at all. To be honest, I mean, I'm a big individual rights, states' rights kind of guy, and this is just bonkers overreach to me.
Yeah.
Education and conversation, that helps always. And I think that the conversation continues to educate a lot of people pertaining to the space. But like you said, times are changing. That wraps up Into the Wire, outlining the biggest headlines in cannabis. It's now time for segment number 2. Mitch, roll the intro as we bring in Mr. Dan Ahrens. It's Wednesday. Good day, sir, and happy Wednesday. Hope you had a good long weekend. How are things? Good to see you.
It was nice. Yeah, I'm hanging in there and glad to be here. I like that intro that you have for me. I look very professional, more than I do today. Okay.
Are you does that resemble who you are? Just the pure professionalism, Dan? Like that's what we're trying to image around, no?
Yeah. No, I'm wearing a jacket and everything. So
I like the t-shirt. Where'd you get the t-shirt?
A pizza joint down in downtown Austin that has some very good pizzas.
That's outstanding.
His name is on the back. Is it Desano? I think it's Desano.
Oh, that's a great t-shirt. All right, sir. Well, we welcome you in this week. Monday being a holiday, so we've got you in here on a Wednesday, and there's a number of questions that both Anthony and Glop have for you, along with our audience. So I'll get the conversation going first and ask. I want to begin with we see still a lot of people struggling trying to understand the difference between active and passive ETFs. Can you maybe explain into detail the difference between the two?
An index. That's it. So yeah, some people get excited when we talk about active management. Oh, they're not very active. No, active management simply means that the fund is not an index-based fund.
Gotcha.
And this came from mutual fund world. In mutual funds, we had actively managed mutual funds. We had index-based mutual funds. When ETFs came around, at first they were all index-based, but it doesn't require it to be in any way. So everything that AdvisorShares does is actively managed. Some of our funds are more active than others. And I will very readily say that in MSOs, I'm not tactically managing that thing. I'm not turning it over. I'm not going to do something like this index-based fund that shall not be named, just rebalanced and screwed everything up in the past couple of weeks. They have no idea what the hell they're doing. So no, I know I need to be gentle with hitting the bid on any of the positions that we have in MSOS and MSOs. And but I'm constantly managing the inflows that we get and trying to put them to work gently and correctly without pushing stocks prices around unnecessarily. So once again, active management can mean a lot of different things. Some funds rebalance on a monthly basis. Some do it regularly. Some do tactical active management. All it means is it's not based on an index.
Good to know. Leave some comments below, everyone, if you're out there. Just if there's any questions you want us to reach out to Dan, now's the time to put those questions down, and we will get those through. Guap, I know there's a couple questions that you wanted to ask, so fire away.
Yeah, so talking about those inflows, I mean, we've seen quite a few, since just if we take the time frame of, the late August HHS Schedule 3 leak on, we're seeing, some pretty nice days of inflows. But there will be one day where we get 10 and another day we get 0. It's hard for a retail shareholder to make sense of what makes up that 10 million, right? What do you have any feel at all about what percentage is retail versus institutional and define institutional however you'd like?
Not a clue. And it's the very nature of any mutual fund, because an ETF is still what's called a 1940 Act investment company in the United States. I mean, it's same as mutual fund. So the difference with an ETF is only something called authorized participants create shares, and market makers clear through authorized participants. The authorized participants are Virtu and Mirai and Merrill Pro, and there's about 20 of them or so. So they do share creations at the end of the day. Simple as that. I will say, we don't know who all the shareholders are.
Yeah.
Because those are controlled by the brokerage firms. Like the annual report, the semi-annual report, the prospectus update, those get distributed by the brokerage firm. I can say that I know we have more than 80,000 shareholders.
Okay.
Now,
so it's not the 80 crazy people that we see every day on Twitter.
Thank God,
that are in the gang.
Me included, by the way. Me included in this.
Yeah.
And when I say shareholders, it's 80,000 accounts. So
Right.
it could be, personally, I have more than one account. I got my IRA, I got my kid, my wife, and everybody's in MSOS and YOLO. And some of them are very big holders that are required to file, like Capital. We love Ricky Sander and his team at Eminence Capital, and they are a huge shareholder in the fund.
Yeah.
So I know that we had not broke, but the news came out last week that the Curaleaf issue was solved. So congrats on that. I know one thing that we've seen people saying is, so when are they going to clear all the swaps, bring it over to paper? I'm assuming that's a process that takes time, and I'm assuming that's a process that has elongated timelines. It's not as easy as, hey, we can do this today. Is there a timeline? Or am I correct in my assumption that there is a timeline to where you, I guess, flip the swaps into paper? Okay.
So one thing I have to, and I've explained this before, the fund is super, super concentrated in the top 5 or 6 holdings. I think everybody knows that. Well, what they might not really know, because they're not mutual fund and ETF experienced people, is a mutual fund or an ETF cannot be that concentrated in a small number of names and pass its 1940 Act and Reg M and all the various concentration and diversification rules that we are under. So I converted a large amount of Curaleaf into being held directly as stock in the fund. And that makes it a little less costly. It makes the fund more tax efficient. And I'm not going to get into everything here about how in-kind creations, in-kind redemptions, custom baskets work. I talked about that on the Nooner yesterday a little bit. I'd rather own stock directly, but I would own too damn much of Curaleaf. So I intend to own Curaleaf directly in the fund, custodied at Bank of New York Mellon, our custody bank, and to also own shares of Curaleaf through the 2 disclosed counterparties right now in our last semi-annual report are Nomura and Clear Street. So I own shares through each of them, and I own it directly. And that's probably going to continue for the foreseeable future.
Well, define too much when you said I own too much, and this is why
there are too damn many rules for me to explain to you, Guap. There's Internal Revenue Code, 1940 Act, Reg M. There's all sorts of things at work here, and no, I'm not going to explain it to everybody. Read the 1940 Act.
All right.
We have
homework is assigned.
I will say that we're very heavily regulated.
Yeah.
And we have, compliance officers and post-trade compliance testing, an awful lot of reporting. Some of these questions that people seem to ask, they should read our semi-annual report.
Yeah.
They should read our annual report. They should read the prospectus and the SAI. They should look at our website where all of the holdings are disclosed every business day.
Yeah.
And a lot of these questions get answered.
Have to get your opinion. Anson Funds, private asset management company out of Toronto, notorious for shorting the stock. They bought a big block of your ETF. Was it last week? 26 million, if I'm correct. Your thoughts on that? Like that made big news.
It was reported last week, but filed probably months prior. Just so you know.
Yeah. Funds and major holders in any fund have to do filings. Hanson Funds, of course, I've heard of them. Never been in touch with them. Don't know, have any relationship or knowledge there like we do with. There's some other big holders that are, funds and family offices and so on. No, I don't know a darn thing about Hanson Funds except what they do, and apparently they're long. So more power to them. Thanks, Hanson Funds.
Yeah.
But you know what? If they're going to short the fund, more power to them as well. I give zero shits. It's a ETF listed on the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah. Just
like Nvidia is listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Do people go long Nvidia? Do they short it? Do they trade options on it? Is there anything wrong with any of those transactions? No. We don't like any manipulation. We don't want a naked shorting. But yeah, people are more than welcome to short, and Hanson Funds appears that they're long. So there you go.
Well, it's telling, I would say, for the future and outlook of the industry, because like I said, this is a shop that's been notorious for shorting stocks. But if they're long, the optimism that's growing, that we continue to have these conversations week in and week out, right?
Yeah. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with shorting. Some people really need to get some education and how market dynamics work. AdvisorShares, we have 17 funds. We have 2 funds that are short funds. The Ranger Equity Bear Fund, and I'm going to give it a little pitch here, HDGE. Another fund is the Dorsey Wright Short Fund. It uses a different strategy and momentum to try to pick which stocks to short. Yeah. And it's very appropriate market dynamics. That's how things work. You're more than welcome to short. Take your chances. Shorting is high risk and carries some costs. So whatever.
Yeah. Anything else that you guys want to ask related to cannabis? You guys want to touch on?
Guap had a couple more.
Yeah, I just want to say, first off, thank you for being so transparent about all of this and answering these questions. I don't think there's been another ETF.
Yeah.
I don't think there's been another ETF in the history of ETFs that has quite gotten the level of scrutiny as this one. And it's because of the makeup. It's because, like we said, the thinly traded underlying stocks owned 95% by retail traders.
Yeah.
And we're prone to throwing a ton of conspiracies at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? So your ability to answer all these questions is definitely noted and appreciated. So I'm going to give you a nice easy one because I think we're too zoomed in. I've been saying this to all of our guests, like we're so locked in on Schedule 3 and how many percentage points does that make my stock go up, that I'd really like to zoom out to a more of a 3 to 5 year time frame and just paint a picture about what this landscape could look like in 3 to 5 years. Like I'm not asking you to tell me, okay, this particular company is going to be acquired by this particular industry, but I think we're so dialed in and we're so waiting for that next catalyst, that we've forgotten why we've invested in the first place a little bit. What does 3 to 5 years out look like to you?
Adam, my friend, that's a hell of a lot of question you just asked, but that's good. So it's going to look different. And, heck, I wrote my book, Investing in Cannabis, and that was a good 3 or 4 years ago, back when we were first launching MSOS. And I've been the boy that cried wolf because I thought it was a great opportunity. And that's, around the same time people were talking about generational opportunity and all that stuff.
Right.
So, hey, it's still all going to happen. It's to dovetail back to what you're saying a little bit, investors need to have a certain demeanor for investing. And far too many cannabis investors do not have the demeanor for investing. They should get an investment advisor and perhaps invest in a good conservative mutual fund. That's all I'm going to say about that. But people better have a good demeanor. They better have a long-term focus because this stuff is still volatile as hell. Since January 1st, cannabis seems to be the top performing industry or sector out there.
Yeah.
Yet people are still bitching about it on any day that it goes down. It's still going to go up and down a lot, people. So 3 to 5 years from now, we saw a flurry of M&A activity, and after Constellation Brands invested in Canopy, well documented, and Altria or Philip Morris and Kronos. But then we saw a number of joint ventures, and it's because those big alcohol and cannabis and tobacco companies, they're kind of tapping the brakes. They're like, wait, I'm not sure if we really want to acquire a Canadian cannabis company. Maybe we'll try some joint ventures while we're waiting on the U.S. So there haven't been any of those to speak of really in the U.S. because all those CPG companies, alcohol companies, tobacco companies, everybody else, they are waiting on federal reform, just like all of us as investors are waiting on that federal reform. But once we get that federal reform and those roadblocks come down, we're going to see big consumer packaged goods companies. We're going to see alcohol companies. We're going to see tobacco companies getting involved in cannabis. There's people out there that probably don't want to sell. Heck, I think, Ben Kovler likes keeping his head down and operating. And I don't know if he has any desire to be acquired. There's some other companies out there that are run by hedge fund guys that very clearly want to be acquired.
Right.
But
wink, wink.
If you look at the alcohol, and I did these parallels in the book. If you look at the alcohol industry at the end of Prohibition, now the alcohol industry is very consolidated.
Yes.
You got a few huge players.
Yeah.
And they like to gobble up craft distillers, craft brewers. And the other thing about the alcohol industry, like a lot of old CPG, just like tobacco, they're big dividend payers.
Yeah.
They're
very big.
They're very cash rich businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So to go off, this is probably more than 3 or 5 years down the line. This is a lot further. It's a decade or so down the line.
Go for it.
I think the cannabis companies that survive, the ones that haven't been gobbled up and merged into other CPG companies, they're going to look a lot like alcohol companies and be paying fat dividends and be cash rich.
You think there's any cannabis company that how do I say this? Like, do you think in due time every cannabis company will be eventually purchased by, let's say, an alcohol company, or do you think there'll be 1 or 2 companies that will be like
there'll be way more than 2.
as big as like a Budweiser one day, Anheuser-Busch one day?
Yeah. I mean, why not? I don't think everybody's going to be acquired. Why would they? Why doesn't a huge CPG company in the why didn't Kraft or something like that own all the alcohol and tobacco companies? It's a different business. So once again, I don't know. I wouldn't. By the way, and I've said this before, it's impossible, and no one should try to gamble on who's going to get acquired. It's a fool's game. The acquisitions come out of left field, and we don't know when and if it's going to happen. But so who the hell knows who's going to get acquired, who's not, who's going to remain standalone? But the way they're set up, Curaleaf, GTI, they look like they want to execute and survive and dominate the world.
Yeah.
I mean, Boris isn't building the footprint he's building to have a Schedule 3 drop and then just sell the whole thing off. He's in it for the long game.
Not by a long shot.
No, but
I think you see the tier ones. I think you see the tier ones all become Budweiser-ish companies, maybe with the exception of like one of them.
Yeah. But in fairness, the topic we're discussing, the question was asked, where do things look in 3 to 5 years? Like, I don't think Boris is the type of person that's going to sell his company. Of course, he's not after a rescheduling announcement, but it's like,
but also keeping in consideration what Dan just said. And I mean, on the backs of Prohibition, you see all this consolidation. I mean, that was 100 years ago. That were and we're looking at that today. So I mean, we got years to go.
Yeah, I
in
know.
the game. Decades. I mean, I know people don't want to hear it, but decades to go in the game of the maturation of the cannabis industry.
Yeah, and quick reminder. I mean,
You guys think decades?
we're-
Decades, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why not? I mean, oh, and I wrote this in the book. Alcohol wasn't a nice, smooth
No.
rise up over 80 years. It was volatile as hell in its first decade or so after prohibition was lifted. Extreme volatility.
Huh.
So we're going to have that as well. And quick reminder, we're kind of cautiously happy with performance since January 1st. It's only been a month and a half or so.
Yes. Yeah.
But, zoom out, look at 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. The fund MSOs hit $55 a share before that was kind of on a spike. But good God, we have a real long way to go, folks. Real long way to go.
$55. Wow. Yeah, we can only fathom for that day to come soon. Well, whether soon or however long it takes, that's a pretty attractive share price to say the least. But I think that was in and around MJ Biz, the one fall, if I'm correct, back in like 2021, if I'm correct, in around that time. But yeah. But hey, look, we've been through a lot, but here we are, still standing tall and still talking, still trying to push this conversation going. But I'm sure through that time, you talked about demeanor. What would you best describe is a demeanor that you should have if you go further into detail when it comes to, and this is not investment advice, but what is that demeanor, you think?
It's calm. It's not taking in conspiracy theories and false narratives with partial information put out there on Twitter. It's a long-term focus, and it's you got to take the punches and keep rolling, because there's people that don't have a demeanor for money management or even doing it on their own. Yeah, you better be good at putting out fires, taking things as they come, and you better be calm and long-term focused. That's the
well
demeanor.
said. Listen,
and not be overexposed, because I think that's the main problem with a lot of people in the cannabis industry.
Yeah,
they've allocated too much of their capital to the cannabis industry, and seeing that volatility on a daily, weekly basis is very hard to palate unless you have a certain mindset.
Yeah.
Had
some. We saw some movement, which was nice to see in the psychedelic space. Your ETF PSIL. One of your bigger placements is with Cybin, who announced their latest, I should say, holdings that they had their latest earnings last week. We also saw one of your other holdings, Numinous Wellness. They raised $6 million that they made official late last week. Had an interesting podcast with Peyton Nyquist earlier this week pertaining to that. But we have seen a little bit of movement regarding in that space right now. And from what I'm seeing and hearing, the back end of 2024, if we get some legalization pertaining to MAPS's MDMA protocol, who's now been rebranded by Lykos Therapeutics. Don't sleep, as I've said before with you on this industry, especially as we focus more. Like, there is a date that's forecasted around the second week of August that we should get some feedback from the FDA, is the news that I got earlier this week. So that bodes well, I would think, for the back end of 2024 pertaining to this industry.
Yeah. And hey, as a good reminder, the holdings for PSIL are updated on our website every single day, so people look at them. Compass Pathways and Cybin are right up at the top. Not quite as heavily weighted as we do in a fund like MSOs, but still pretty heavily weighted compared to what you'd see in a typical fund. Quick pitch here. We also have the AdvisorShares Restaurants ETF, Hotels ETF. Those are much more normal, balanced, not too top heavy funds. PSIL, psychedelics, pretty heavy in Compass Pathways and Cybin. But then the reason I'm giving this pitch is not to pitch the fund per se. You can look at the holdings, people, and the holdings are all there, because there was one that you guys weren't too familiar with, Greenbrook, went up 97% today. And it suddenly is now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, It's the 6th largest holding in the fund because it went up so much.
It was up 97% today.
Yeah, one day.
Wow.
It's at 38 cents. So
Yeah.
we're talking about penny stock here. Hey, Numinous, it's in the fund, but it's not a huge holding. I wish Numinous would get NASDAQ listed or something like that.
Yeah.
But, so it's not quite as liquid and easily traded as some others, but we got Numinous in there.
One thing I learned too in that podcast with Peyton is that their partnership, I shouldn't say their collaboration, I should say, with MAPS actually being a drug developer can't own the actual clinical model as well. So I'm actually looking at that closely. And full disclosure, they are a client of ours. But obviously you're going to have to get a lot more therapists trained in the clinical model, the infrastructure to build out across the country. But that's something we're watching closely as far as the collaboration that's being built out there. And knowing that if and when the FDA does approve, like what is outlined in that itinerary, like where you have to take it, what kind of setting, does it take place in a clinical model, which I'm hearing it is, but something that I thought was rather interesting that I learned earlier this week pertaining to that.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting when, when we go to Benzinga conferences and things like this, there's some overlap with psychedelics and cannabis, but that's kind of where the similarities end. And, I love the work that, MAPS is doing and so on, but that's not directly investable. So you have to look at, okay, after you see the headway that's being made in psychedelics and how things are moving forward, how there's progressing, then you look at the companies that are actually investable.
Yes.
And we're not talking about adult use psychedelics here, people. We're talking about FDA trial pipeline and real treatments like you mentioned, Shad. So,
well, you're talking about a phase 3 trial that basically 71% of people that partaked in it no longer met the requirements of PTSD. And I think, the first reaction is it's too good to be true, but it's not. The data actually shows that. And that's what makes this industry. It's definitely biotech where, you can understand cannabis is not that. And I can understand how some investors in the early days thought there's some similarities, but the two industries are definitely completely different.
Yep. So, PTSD and brain trauma, lots of those things are where we see an awful lot of psychedelics uses. But there's companies in this portfolio that suicidal ideation, if I'm saying that right. They have a drug in trial that can help people that are suicidal. In Cannex went up 43% today. They have they're having discussion with the FDA about smoking cessation, which can be done with a cannabinoid based drug.
I've seen that.
So,
that's interesting. It's funny because Cannex actually comes up on Robinhood as one of the top cannabis stocks.
Does it really?
Within the app, yeah.
Well, it's in our PSIL fund, not in our cannabis funds.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's a good stock though. They've got some interesting research going on within Cannex.
Well, we live and learn from you every single week. We appreciate this, but we'll get catch back up with you next Monday at our usual time. In the meantime, say hello to the crew and keep going with that Nooner podcast. We tee that up every Friday. Thanks. And we appreciate you checking in. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, guys. You too.
All right.
Thanks, Dan. And now I want pizza for dinner.
I know. Jungle Java wrote. I think Dan should get partnered up with a pizza joint and put all those ETFs.
He has an Eats ETF that invests in fast casual restaurant chains and the like. So it's not off brand for him to rock some pizza gear.
Tech Monkey writes, do you think Tilray will be helped by a yes vote in Germany? I don't want to sway people one way or another, but one would think that, yes, they would benefit from everything going yes and adult use being live in Germany, knowing that their presence within that market.
Germany, Germany, we've been getting pelted all day. Why aren't you covering Germany? Why aren't you covering Germany? Like, we've covered Germany. We've beat Germany like a dead horse. Let the Germans get the legislation across the line, get it approved. We will have a full-blown episode on 100%. Germany and everybody that's going to benefit from it. once
Are you going to wear lederhosen for that, Anthony?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. We'll get you some.
Jungle Java, we actually had a call with her last week. What an incredible person, and the way she gives back. She's definitely someone that she's well respected, and we should give her a shout out to her almost every single podcast. She writes, I would certainly hope that after the shit show that was MJUS Rebalance, that people will appreciate the job that Dan does with MSOS, which amen to that. That's for sure. One thing I wanted to outline too, you actually wrote down a list here, Guap, which, you know, you want to talk about catalysts galore. Think about this. We got DEA pending confirmation to Schedule 3, Safe Banking comeback after agreement, Germany, the vote in Finance Committee and Health Committee, the final vote, Germany, on legalization. What else do we have? The Florida Supreme Court decision on adult use cannabis. These are major catalyst moments here in 2024. Like, these are big. Go ahead.
Just like we're saying, these are going to take time. You just mentioned Florida and Virginia. I think Guap said, what is it? Adult use is January 1st, 2025. Yeah. Adult use in Florida would be best case scenario, July 2025.
Yeah.
I'm assuming PA also, if it gets passed, finds its way in the middle there somewhere where it's a 2025 implementation story.
Re-educate us though. Like, what's the approval rate of, like, once this, like, let's say it does get on the ballot, like, what's is it 65% in Florida?
60% it needs to break the threshold, which I think smokable flower did 72% on the ballot. And wow. I would agree that, or I would bet that the population of Florida has gotten more liberal over the past couple of years with people moving here from COVID.
Oh, 100%. Good point.
My overall point, putting together the list is just, there's so much to look forward to, and markets are forward looking. So yes, Germany legalizing, Ohio, all these states and territories legalizing. I mean, we know they're going to happen. We don't know when. And it's not like each and every one of these companies needs to make a dollar there for their stock price to go up, right? So just a whole list of catalysts coming up, and everyone should be pretty excited to see how it plays out. I think the demeanor that Dan was talking about is, like, for me, it's I'm in the space now. I'm following it a lot more closely day to day than I was, and
yes,
but there's nothing wrong with acting like it's 1992 and the internet doesn't exist, right? Like, you're like, hey, I heard the president said something about cannabis. I'm going to invest in this cannabis ETF. And then, let me check back in a year. Yeah. Can you imagine if you took it that easy on yourself?
You'd be living stress-free right now.
But this is what makes the three of us. This is what makes the three of us and our viewers the original OGs. And that's exactly what we are if we do get this all come to fruition. Tech Monkey, appreciate the shout outs today. You were great. We talked about a lot of alcohol companies coming in, potentially buying these cannabis companies later on down the road. Don't sleep on big tobacco, Altria. That's actually a good point. But yeah, don't forget, quick reminder, please like this video, share this video with your network as well. Click on that notifications to give you the latest updates and some of the big podcasts and interviews that we have coming up. So stay close, stay in tune. And like I said, click on that bell for notifications. And please subscribe to our channel as well. Log on to sdalesreport.com and subscribe to the Baked In newsletter. We've got the latest equity research report coming out tomorrow. Again, these reports are for you, benefit you, the everyday investor. We got to let Mitch go. He's about to have his wife give birth to twins. Jesus. It's 49 minutes, and he's like, Kai,
we could go for hours, guys.
All right, Mitch, we're out of here. We got to go. See you Friday at 11 a.m., gents.
All right. Signing off from Florida.
Go get him, Mitch. Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.